Obie Spencer, and welcome to the Sports Den. You can, of course, find us on Zingo TV, channel 250 and 251. You can get that app on your iPhone or your other smartphone and your smart TVs, 2016 and forward, Google Chromecast, pretty much anywhere you can watch TV over VoIP. I will be joined momentarily by one J.D. Walker. There he is. And today we're gonna wrap up the football for the regular season and begin to talk about the playoffs, and if time permits, maybe touch on that college championship game. But before I get going, JD, my man, how are you?
Doing fine. Just holding it together this week.
Wonderful. So I'm going to start off with how that regular season ended. There was a couple of games of note. One game that I think shocked everyone with the Colts and Jacksonville. Wentz at the worst possible time you could Wentz, unless you're an Eagle fan, which means that we got a better draft pick. So thank you once again. You got us to the playoffs, and Foles took us to the promised land, and now you got us a higher draft pick. So thank you very much, Wentz. I don't know if you watched that game. I didn't, because I wasn't even something I thought I'd want to tune into, let alone had access to on my TV. But any thoughts on that game other than Wentzing and giving the ball up all over in the fourth, all over that game?
For the Jaguars-Colts game, I did not watch that game either. But it's worth noting that Jacksonville has beaten the Colts for every game in Jacksonville since 2014. So for as bad as the Jaguars are, they match up against the Colts well for some reason. And Wentz going to Wentz at the worst possible time.
Yeah. I mean, I knew about that matchup problem, but it just seemed like, that's not something that's going to continue in a must-win, walk into the playoffs type game. I looked at that game, and really, Frank Reich should have looked at Coach Belichick and said, what do I do here? Oh, I run the ball every play with the best player on the field until this game is over, but he didn't. So let's move on to the game that had everybody's eyes on it, the tie of the century. I know you were watching that game for sure. Before we get into the last play of the game, talk to me about your takeaways from that unbelievable Raiders-Charger game.
It was. I thought that the key to the game was when Staley outfought himself and go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 20 early in the third quarter, and seemed to be a momentum killer. Yet Herbert was a stud later in the game, and he seemed to only be making plays on 4th down. They were something like 6 for 8 on 4th down conversions, which is insane to me. And they just kept driving down the field and managed to score 2 touchdowns to tie it. And of course the timeout later in the overtime. I'm amazed that the game was as close as it was. I expected a close game. Just the way that it all went down was pretty crazy, and was refreshing to see, because there's been a lot of garbage games in the league this year. So seeing a good one for once it was like they saved the best game for last.
Yeah. So Herbert is getting a ton of praise for what he did on 4th down at the end of that game in regulation and overtime. I, for one, am going to be the one to knock him, because all of those were 4th and longs.
Yes.
And whether it's Staley, let me not knock Herbert. Let me knock the Chargers. Whether it was Staley or the play calling, to have 4th and 10 that often, it was just insane. Like, I don't know why it kept happening. There was definitely some drops. There was some bad passes. It felt like they couldn't call anybody open. So I think that that's a team that, despite having an amazing talent at quarterback, needs to really look at itself and figure it out. People have been saying that the Chargers go to sleep at the end of the season for a very long time, since LT was there. LT2, LaDainian Tomlinson. And they took a nap here at the end. Now, watching that game, that timeout at the end of the game was so awkward. I am not saying that the Raiders were going to not go for it. I mean, it was a classic case of prisoner's dilemma for anyone who knows that mind puzzle.
Yes.
If neither guy who's caught talks, they both go off. But they're given a better option if they talk first than getting caught. And that was a real life instance of it. And it looked like, watching the game, that Oakland was content until that timeout was called. Now, I don't know. They would have still probably run a play on 3rd and 6. It probably would have been a running play. And San Diego's defense probably would have stopped them, and they would have had a nice long field goal. But they were talking that if it was over 50-something yards, they weren't taking the chance that the field goal would be returned, and they would have knelt it. Staley has to look at himself for a lot of things, including that timeout, because that timeout felt like a scare. Like, he did it because he was scared. I'm not saying that it would have changed anything, but he had his defense on. They were stopping the run. He probably should have left them on. He got scared, and he made a move. We're going to talk more about this Raiders team and what I think is going to happen with them when we get to the games this week. But pardon me, I have reason to feel the Raiders are the scariest team in the playoffs, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I feel like Staley said after the game that they were that he was concerned about the defensive personnel that they had out there and what the Raiders were going to do, and that they didn't have the right run defense in. But even the players that they swapped out for that were questionable. So it was just, there's a lot of coaches in the league that overthink. And Staley seems to be one of them, because every Chargers game that I've seen this year has been something where they have the superior talent. Just the play calling is questionable. The other thing that was a lot of defensive penalties, especially on the Chargers. It felt like every time that the Raiders went for a long pass that there was a flag coming out for pass interference. And a lot of them were blatant ones right in front of the officials. So they have to, it wasn't something where it was borderline and a ticky-tack call or whatever. These were blatant ones. And that's a sign of an undisciplined team. And that goes back to coaching. Now, with Staley being in his first season, they're not going to make a change, especially being that close to the playoffs. But if it happens again, they really need to think about making changes so they're not wasting Herbert's prime. Because with the insane nature of finances in the NFL and rookie contracts, where now that window is only about 2 or 3 years. And you have Herbert going into year 3. So it's kind of put up or shut up time, because you need to decide after year 3 whether to give the option for year 5, which that makes no sense to me personally, but I understand why they do that. But having to make a decision for the options, and teams that have been burned on that's basic. Look at where the Browns are with Baker Mayfield. They already picked up his option for next year, and now he's terrible, and they're stuck with him, and they don't really know what to do. But is there a better upgrade out there? Who knows?
Yeah, so definitely Staley has to examine himself this offseason and see if he can become a better coach to make that team better. We're going to find out if he can. I mean, Bill Belichick wasn't the best coach in the NFL in his first season either. So, speaking of coaches, there's 3 coaching stories that you don't want to have on in the offseason, especially starting on Black Monday. You don't want to be the team that fired a coach that people don't understand why that coach got fired. You don't want to be the team that kept the coach that nobody can understand why you kept that coach. And you don't want to be the team that hires a coach later that people are like, that's the guy you hired. Well, the Giants that's the guy they hired when they picked Joe Judge. 2 years later, they're the team that you didn't fire your coach with Joe Judge. Usually, we start talking about the Giants with Scott here, and I'm like, what are we doing, Scott? This team sucks. Nobody cares. Yeah. But they deserve to be national news right now with keeping Joe Judge.
And so does Rob Stats and the Miami Dolphins.
Yes. Well, we're going to get to his team, I think, in a bit. But Joe Judge, when they hire a GM, are they going to keep Joe Judge? Do you think there's any way possible someone takes that job as a GM and says, yeah, Joe Judge is my guy?
The only way I see that possibly happening is if the Giants do what is rumored that they might do, and just promote the assistant GM, which is just more of the same. There,
So
this ownership is absolutely dysfunctional with the Giants. I look at I look at both of those teams, both the Giants and the Dolphins, and think, wow, I never thought that the Jets and their ownership and their management would be more competent than these fools.
agreed. So the good news, if you're a Giants fan, is that the assistant GM has taken himself out of the running, and the team is looking outside for the first time since 1961 to hire a GM from outside the organization. We'll see if that happens. The other coach I did want to talk about was Flores. He has last 12 years. Ross has had three winning teams, and Flores has had two of them in back-to-back seasons. There is some talk that there was a disagreement on the quarterback perspective, and that's why he was removed from the job. I don't know if that will turn out to be true or if we'll ever know. But I agree that Miami making themselves look real dumb by getting rid of Flores, who will probably get a job this offseason. There are mitigating factors. We know what they are for why he might not get a job, but otherwise he should definitely get one.
Yeah, and for the fact that, let's say, with Ross is another one of the dumber owners in football, and they have Tua, yet they can't decide if they actually want to keep him. Even though you would think that winning 7 of their last 8 games would make it a no-brainer regarding the coach and the quarterback. They're still may or may not be thinking about Deshaun Watson, but firing Flores blows all that up in all likelihood. But nobody should touch. I'm of the opinion that nobody should touch Deshaun Watson with a 10-foot pole. But just that is the big factor here, that they're still talking about the quarterback, even though you have a quarterback who just won 7 of the last 8 games. They go from 1-7 to 8-9. That is, and what more do you want? You're not the Patriots. You're not even Dallas. Like, what are the Dolphins doing? In a perfect world, the Giants would snatch up Flores, and they should. But going from one Belichick assistant to another one is a hard sell.
So yeah, like the Miami Dolphins are messing around on the quarterback front. I agree with you. Watson, he brings so much baggage between wanting to get out and then having this come forth. He brings a lot of baggage. Miami doesn't seem to know what it's doing. Not to mention that, again, I don't know where the Tua problem's coming from, whether it's coming from Flores, whether it's coming from the owner, whether it's coming from the GM. Guy led the NFL in completion percentage this year. That's a no-joke stat to lead the NFL in. That's an important stat. And that this is a guy who I think is ready to prove he's going to be an NFL quarterback. This is going to be, in my mind, and I'm horrible at this prediction about quarterbacks, so it's probably wrong, the best draft class since Big Ben's class. With you have Burrow, you have Herbert, and Tua is going to be a guy. And he might be just a guy, but he's going to be just a guy for 10 to 12 years in the NFL, which means if you put just the right pieces around him, he probably will not be the highest paid quarterback ever in his career, and which will extend his window, as you were saying earlier, where Herbert's going to demand the most, and you're going to be able to win with him if you play yourself right. The other team you mentioned there was the Cowboys, which, I think that if they lose this game, their coach should be on the hot sheet. But it should be noted that Jerry Jones is incredibly patient with head coaches. But let's talk about this Cowboy 49er game. I think that if you were the 49ers or you were the Eagles, you wanted to play the Cowboys and not Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Because they can't stop the run, and Tampa Bay can stop the run. So the 49ers got what they needed, kind of were forced into it because the Saints went ahead and crushed Atlanta. They got the Cowboys. Do the Cowboys' higher level of talent have the coaching staff and the wherewithal to stop this team?
I think they could, and personally, I think that I think San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan have been overrated for years. They're a talented team, but I do not see them as a team that is going to go deep in the playoffs. They might. I mean, they did just go to a Super Bowl 2 years ago, but at the same time, I think that this game is kind of a coin flip, between Dallas and San Francisco. On paper, Dallas has more talent, but and McCarthy has won a Super Bowl before, so if somebody that has coached in the playoffs before and has that experience, you would think but Shanahan has that as well, without actually winning the Super Bowl, only the losses. But I still give a slight edge to the Cowboys here.
I'm not gonna necessarily pick a team. I do think one thing. I do think there will be at least one upset on each side of the bracket in the 6 games that we get to see. And I don't think it will be Tampa Bay, and I don't think it will be Pittsburgh. So it only really gives me two out of 4 games to get. But the run defense here is suspect. Over the last 9 games, they've given up 130 yards per game. They're like 2-4 in games where they give over 125 yards rushing per game. And the San Francisco team is going to try to run the ball against them. Now, the flip side is this is not the same team that was playing defensively against the Eagles. The same offensive team, but it's not the same defensive team. You're supposed to have Parsons back. You're supposed to have Diggs back. If the one place where I have faith in the Cowboys is if the 49ers are driving down the field, needing to score a touchdown, they can get pressure with 4 guys between Parsons, Lawrence, Jeffrey, and whoever else they throw in there. They're going to get pressure with 4 guys. I think this is probably the team that, if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm most fearful of is the Cowboys. They can keep up with me scoring, and they can beat me the way you beat Tom Brady with his pressure with 4. But the playoffs are about matchups, and the Cowboys got one of the teams they really didn't want to play in San Francisco. Now, my team, the Eagles, are playing the team that I think they absolutely did not want to play, and that's Tampa Bay. Their rush defense here is spectacular. They're going to have to win behind Jalen Hurts. Chances Jalen Hurts can take them past Tom and the Bucs?
Yeah, not looking too good. I mean, anything is possible. It's just about get in and then see what happens. But it definitely looks like an uphill battle for the Eagles with this matchup with Tampa. And all the Bucs defense needs to do is sit back and is stack the box and sit back and let Jalen Hurts beat them. I'm not so sure he's up for the task. He might be. We don't know. But not feeling very confident about that.
So I have a vision for how this game can happen. I will express how my Eagles can pull up what I would think would be in my mind. I think this would be a bigger upset even than Pittsburgh beating Kansas City, just because the matchup is rough. But if they are running successfully and they can force people down to come into the box and get the box loaded, which is possible because that offensive line has been spectacular all season. No matter who the running back is, they ran great without Sanders the first time Sanders went down. So they can go ahead and run, and Hurts will run like a running back. He's not ever really trying to throw the ball just to prove he can throw the ball. He's going to try to run the ball. But Devontae Smith has been spectacular. He really has. And if he can get himself open once or twice and make a big play once or twice, and the less than full offense of Tampa Bay looks like they did against the Jets, the Eagles stand a chance. But they looked great both games against Carolina, that offense, and looked ridiculous against the Jets. I don't know what that offense holds. We will see what that offense holds. But that is the Eagles need to be watching that Jet tape and see if they can get, look, it's always the same. Get pressure with 4 guys on Brady. And I don't know if the Eagles have 4 guys who can do that.
The Eagles do not have a strong enough pass rush in order to throw Brady off this game, because that's been the scouting report on Brady for decades. That is that if you get in his face, knock him around like the Giants did in the 2 Super Bowls, then you can rattle him enough to have a chance. The Eagles do not have a strong enough pass rush for that.
No, I agree. Now, to me, this is the most fascinating game. We get Raiders versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati beat the Raiders pretty handedly in Las Vegas last time they played. Since then, I think that was the last game the Raiders lost. To me,
I believe so.
There's always some team in the playoffs that comes in and is the hot team. Now, they usually don't win it, but sometimes you got the Pittsburgh Steelers winning a Super Bowl, the Giants winning a Super Bowl.
The Packers in
the Packers
2010.
And this Raiders team, this is the team that story is for this season. Even my Eagles, when they won it, although they had been a great team, they got hurt. Wentz got hurt, and then they somehow managed to get through and win. Carr is exactly the kind of quarterback that story is usually built around. Good, but not great. Does he deserve to be in the NFL? Yes. Do you start every season going, we have a chance just because he's our quarterback? No. He needs the right pieces around him. They appear to be there, although Ruggs is gone. So many people love Hunter Renfrow now. Just think he's the greatest thing since Swiss cheese or sliced bread. And I just they're the story I like. I like their story. On the other side, you got Joe Burrow with his cigars, with his national championship game, and the guy who's looking to be excuse me, I will take that spot in the top 5 quarterbacks of my generation, please. I'm ready. Let me slip in there with Mahomes, Rodgers, and Brady. Please sign me up. Even though Herbert seems a slightly better talent, Burrow has that extra thing that they always talk about. And you see it, and you're just like, oh, he's the guy. He's 99% as good as this other dude and got that 100% better in the head. So I'm excited about this game because I think the Raiders are the team to beat just because of the story. And I'm going to love that story every time they win. I don't think they're a team to beat on the field. And Burrow needs that first playoff experience, and here it comes. I know you've told me before you don't expect the second-year quarterback in his first playoff experience to make it to the Super Bowl. So tell me about these two teams.
I think that the Raiders coming in as a hot team, as you said, is definitely a factor here. Also, Bengal's gonna bungle. It's just like Wentz gonna Wentz. Bengal's gonna bungle. The Bengals have not won a playoff game since the 1990 season. That is, and I believe it was the game that Bo Jackson got hurt. In 90 or 91. That was the last time that the Bengals actually won a playoff game. It was that season.
Before you go on, I saw a great quote. Nobody has ever sent a legitimate text message about the Bengals winning a playoff game. There were no text messages. Now, please go on.
Right. That's how long it's been. So I think that streak continues this year because the Raiders are coming in hot. You have Burrow as a second year quarterback in the playoffs, and there's talents clearly on the Bengals, and Burrow is a stud. But does that translate to playoff success? There's been many times where the Bengals have gone into the playoffs with very good and talented teams, more talented than this one, and they come up empty every time. So I have not seen enough to think that streak doesn't continue.
I agree with you. I also think that right now, when the draft happened, we all said, okay, take Jamar Chase. You need offensive line help. Now, Jamar Chase has been spectacular.
Yes.
Even as a guy who loves offensive linemen, I kind of got to go, okay, I think you were right. But now, and I think he was obviously a key piece in them getting this far. And they probably wouldn't have gotten this far with less of a weapon and more protection.
Agreed.
But in the playoffs, did you see what I know you did. We all saw what Max Crosby did to that game all on his own. It was a one-man wrecking crew. And I don't know there's anybody on that offensive line in Cincinnati who can do anything about him. So now you're going to have to keep your tight end in. You're going to reduce the number of weapons you can have out there to get the ball to. It's going to require some very good coaching and a lot of talented reads by a young quarterback to beat this defense. And I'm with you. I don't think they're ready for it.
Yeah, there is absolutely nobody on the Bengals who can stop Crosby, and I could see Crosby making it a very bad day for Burrow. And Carr doesn't need to win the game by himself for the Raiders. Because the Raiders have Crosby into solid defense who can knock Burrow around. So Carr can be a hero, but he doesn't have to be.
Agreed. Speaking of young quarterbacks making their playoff debut, another guy who's trying to say, hey, no, I'm supposed to be in that top 5. We got Mighty Mouse over in Arizona. And we have a guy who's proven he's never going to be in the top 5, but may get himself a Super Bowl ring and may end up somehow getting to the Hall of Fame in Stafford. At this point, I have lost all faith in Stafford being anything better than half a step better than Goff. And without a really good running game, I don't think that half a step better than Goff is going to get it done. I felt that I was high on Arizona. They tripped up a little bit, but then they just smashed the Cowboys when things had gotten bad. They won again this week. I think they may have figured out how to do it without Nuck. I don't know if they can beat the other 3 teams who are left in the playoffs on matchups, but I think they can beat the Rams again, especially with the garbage that Stafford has been throwing around lately. Your thoughts?
Another one where just like with the Bengals in their history, Matt Stafford's history precedes him. I will say that this is Matt Stafford's first home playoff game. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make, but much has been made about Stafford and his lack of success in the playoffs. But each time when he was in the playoffs with the Lions, they were in as a wild card, playing on the road against a heavily favored team. So there was never a position where the Lions were never in a position where they were favored and choked. They just didn't really. They just had a bad matchup, and that matchup played out as expected. With this time around, I'm still, and it isn't just the Stafford being 0-3 in the playoffs. It's him having like a 120 win percentage for his entire career against teams over 500. They've split with the Cardinals already this year, so being in division rivals, that could go either way. So with Arizona looking like they've woken up, I don't necessarily think that the Cardinals are Super Bowl material just yet, but I do think that they probably win this game because of Stafford's history. Stafford has not been playing well, and also the Rams have not really looked like world beaters. And I think that they could have easily smashed the Niners by 2 touchdowns the other day. And they didn't, and they just kind of folded. They could have knocked San Francisco out of the playoffs and been done, but they couldn't do it. I think that it goes as far as Murray goes with the Cardinals. If Murray has a bad game and the Rams defense can shake him up, then the Rams have a chance. But otherwise, I really don't think that the Rams pull this off. I think it's a close one in a competitive game, and it'll be fun to watch, but I don't think the Rams win.
So I think that the Rams are – I find it hard to believe that the Rams do not have their confidence completely shook. It's one thing to be up 17-0, and the coach to go, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't care who we play. Arizona's fine with me. I don't need to win this game. Let's fold up. Everyone get out of this game without getting injured. And then you lose the game, and I go, no, you won the first half. You're up 17-0. You look like the absolutely dominant team. Good enough. Instead, they went out there, and they were playing a team that had to win. The mindset that every team they're going to play for the rest of the season is going to be having. And they lost. And Stafford threw more interceptions. And Stafford just looked like the guy who we are talking about when we talk about, oh, this guy can't win football games. This guy can't beat teams with winning records. And I mean, we throw out that stat that he's got 101 something record against teams with winning records. And my first thought when I heard that was like, oh well, okay, well teams are winning records are better than you, and you have. But then we looked at it, and most of the great quarterbacks do not have winning records against teams with winning records, which makes sense. But they're around 450, 460. And that would make complete sense because teams with a winning record in the NFL are 600 teams. So Stafford is not beating the winning teams at the rate that they're even losing at. So, yeah, he's 0-3 in the playoffs. He can join Y.A. Tittle, and I can't remember who the other quarterback was, to go 0-4 against in the playoffs. Andy Dalton, who we talked about. And it's different to say the Bengals are going to bungle when it's a team, it's a franchise, and the players are all rotating over. This is the same guy. And yeah, he has different people around him, but he's a quarterback. And as much as I don't like how often we talk about quarterbacks, and let's talk about the line, let's make sure the other guys get their credit, whether it's Brady or Mahomes or whomever, that great quarterback can make a difference because they control more of the game than anybody else. And Stafford has played uninspired at best in big games. We did see him win the one game against a team with 10 wins. I guess that was Arizona a few weeks back.
Yeah.
But that was it.
But they played very badly against the Titans earlier in the season.
Yeah. And they lost to Arizona earlier in the season. So they're not a great team. As great as we thought they would be. I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on in the backfield. I mean, maybe Cam Akers will come out, and having had another week, that Achilles will be all the difference. And that's the wild card to me is Cam Akers. Because if that running game can return to the McVay running game, which we've seen just take off in the playoffs on multiple occasions, doesn't even matter who the back is. Almost like an old Shanahan, in Denver. Who cares who the running back is? Just put him back there and let him run. Then I have faith in the rest of the team. I have faith in Donald picking it up, and I have faith in if the running back can do it. But I'm with you. I think this is a big chance for an upset.
Yeah. And also, we're probably not going to get Odell Beckham to save the day. It is possible, but Odell Beckham's only playoff experience was the infamous party boat game, with the Giants, where he was on the boat hanging out with Justin Bieber a few days before the game, and then the Giants went out and got blasted by the Packers.
Yeah,
and the Giants, the entire Giants organization hasn't been the same since. That game essentially broke the Giants franchise. But Beckham hasn't really, he's a playmaker when it doesn't matter. Can he step up and be the playmaker on the big stage when it matters? Again, I'm thinking the answer is probably no.
Well, so I think that's an unfair question because I think Beckham has fallen into being the number 2 wide receiver on his team, which is fine. And as a number 2 wide receiver, he's through the moon, fantastic, way better than your number 2 receiver, whoever you are, for the most part. So that's great when you have a guy who can come in and do that.
I mean, Cooper Kupp had one of the best statistical wide receiver seasons a wide receiver has had ever.
Yes, and that's the one interesting thing between. I think the number 1 and the number 2 wide receiver yards per season, the quarterback was Matt Stafford. So this is how Stafford is going to get into the Hall of Fame, by making wide receivers great and never winning a playoff game. I don't think that's the best plan. He's going to need somebody else to do something. But he did, people are going to remember Odell Beckham went from can't score a touchdown anymore to scoring a touchdown every game. So there is, as much as we are both knocking Stafford, there is something to be said that he's not. He's better than Baker Mayfield still. He's proven
he's basically the next generation's Phillip Rivers, as far as I'm concerned. A team where although he doesn't have as many playoff wins as Rivers or any, because Rivers doesn't have that many, but I know he has more than 0. But he's the same way where he'll put up numbers. He's a stats compiler, but do you think, I can win a Super Bowl with this guy? Probably not.
I think you and I just look at that last line differently. I think that he's a guy you can win a Super Bowl with. He's not a guy who's going to win you a Super Bowl. Slightly different. Like
Yes,
if everything
he
else
won't
goes
win the
right,
Super Bowl by himself.
no, he cannot win the Super Bowl
Brady,
by himself.
like
He is,
Brady and Manning did.
yeah, he is. Yeah, he has proven that he is not in that even if they go on and win the Super Bowl, he has proven he's not in that tier of the guys who you start the season with this guy on your team. The other 21 guys don't matter. I already feel good. He's proven that he's not that guy.
Yes.
So, speaking of that guy, we're going to skip the game I had next because the seg is too good. Let's talk about Kansas City and Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
So, Patty Mahomes is that guy. You're like, oh, who cares who the other 21 guys are? Roethlisberger's has always been in that tier above what we just started with Stratford. Like, he's good enough that you know confidently he's going to give you a shot. He's been to somebody put it great. He's won twice as many Super Bowls as Roethlisberger has. And
yes.
He's been to 3 times as many. So I think everyone loves give Ben his due. He has been a great player who his retirement tour just won't end. Will it finally end this week?
I think it does. And I will say that Roethlisberger is a step up and has won those Super Bowls, but I don't, for the life of me, know of any other quarterback who has won multiple Super Bowls and played as badly as Roethlisberger has in those 3 games, winning 2 of them. Statistically, his numbers were brutal. I mean, the refs essentially handed him the game versus Seattle, the first time around. And the second time, it was Santonio Holmes bailing him out. But his overall numbers weren't that great. And both times the Steelers' defense, was savage. So Roethlisberger is a step above, above Stafford, above Rivers, because he's won that, but he's not on the level of a Mahomes or even the Mannings. He's good. He's a Hall of Famer. He always gives you a chance. He just wasn't the stud on the biggest stage at the biggest time, but he got them there. I don't think that happens again. We do not have vintage Roethlisberger. We have Ben, who is clearly absolutely done. And Mahomes is hungry, especially after how they lost the Super Bowl last year to Tampa, and the slow start this year, and they're kind of getting their groove. The Chiefs are kind of getting their groove back. They're not unbeatable, but they have the most experience on the AFC side. It comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, it comes down to the Chiefs or the Patriots.
Well, I think that we'll get to the Patriots in a second, but I agree with Mahomes. This team is, I think, primed for this Pittsburgh team. Like, this is exactly the team they want to play. This is the team that they can get to the quarterback. This is the team that Pittsburgh, is Watt fantastic? Yes. But I can't remember the last time there was somebody that good on the defensive line that was that unsupported by the rest of the defensive line. Like, he's freakishly good with nobody that – maybe Derek Thomas back in the day in Kansas City, where it was just Derek Thomas. I mean, it is just Watt. Occasionally Hayward busts through on a play, but it is just Watt. So you can scheme to that. You can scheme to this is the guy we're going to take out. Yeah, he's going to get a sack or two because he's just that good. But when you see him coming around Mahomes, tuck that ball, get down, and take your sack. And I think Mahomes will do that. So as long as Mahomes plays smart without his interceptions, I don't see this game getting out of hand and Kansas City having a problem with it. I'm with you. This is a nice game if you don't have a bye. Shame on Indianapolis for letting this happen. Shame on the Chargers for letting this happen. Shame on the Raiders for winning and letting this happen. Congratulations to Ben Roethlisberger. Extend your retirement tour. Go ahead, win this game so you can personally come and laugh in my face, which I would greatly appreciate if you called me out yourself. But I just don't see this happening. And, it's one of the few times, and it's not even look, Many, many times Pittsburgh wins because Mike Tomlin is the best player on the field, so to speak. But he's going up against Andy Reid. So it's not even – it's one of those places where the coaching is even. He's not even like, oh, fortunately, I'm going against Stanley over there who's going to make a timeout call at a time when what's the value and show his team he's afraid. Or he's going to go for it. He doesn't have the advantage of a coach who's going to give him something with Reid. So I really like Kansas City to win this one going away. And they just have to get out of here without any injuries, which takes us to a game I know. I think we're finally going to disagree on one of these games based on what you said. The Pats and the Bills. I'm going to even let you go first on that one.
This game, again, with division rivals playing in the playoff games where you have a rubber match when they split both regular season games, those could go either way. This game being in Buffalo, where earlier this year we had the infamous run and don't throw any passes game, like something out of the 1920s, not 2020s. That I have no idea what the weather forecast is like, but Buffalo in January is rarely nice. So you can never count out yes, I've said that what wins out here? Is it Belichick's coaching, or is it a rookie quarterback that normally would play like a rookie when the playoffs come around? We don't know yet. And Allen is the best quarterback by far out of that class of 2018 that had all of the quarterbacks that we thought might be studs. Realistically, Allen and Lamar Jackson are the only ones who are solidly talented out of that group. So I do fit. So, but he, as talented as Allen is, he's also inconsistent. So should have experience playing in cold weather by now. They made a deep playoff run last year. So I give a slight edge to Buffalo here, but you can never count out the Patriots and their coaching ever.
So I think watching these two teams play, and I've watched a few of their games, and I watched them play head up. The coach on one side is way better than the coach on the other side because the other coach didn't realize what was happening, and you and me and everyone else watching the game did. But the players, when the weather didn't matter and talent was what mattered, Buffalo trounced New England. Now, the interesting thing about this, not only they split, but they won. Both teams won on the road.
Yes.
Allen, in my mind, I've seen him now a few years. I agree with you. I actually tend to, surprisingly myself, even say he is a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson because
I agree.
He can get the ball downfield, and he's figured out how to have a relatively good completion percentage and accuracy downfield. So I think of him as very much along the lines of Ben Roethlisberger. Like, he can get you there. I know he can. He needs some things to break his way, but he's going to need some help still when he's there. They don't really have that kind of running back help for the most part yet. They've got Devin Singletary starting to play a lot better these last few games, I know, because I kept not starting him in fantasy and having it bite me in the butt. So, I like them to win this game. I think that the weather will not be freakishly windy or even freakishly cold. So there's some of that they can work through. I also think that, like I said, I think they're the better team. I looked at the team. They have the best pass defense in the NFL by yardage, which, of course, you could say, well, one game they only had 3 yards against them anyway, 3 passes against them anyway. But they were still the best by 470 yards. So even if Mac Jones put up 250 yards that game and didn't run the ball the way they did, they were still the best pass defense by 200-something yards, which means that Mac Jones is going to still have to have trouble this game. They're still going to have to run this game against them. And in normal weather, I feel like this Buffalo team can go ahead, get a lead, and keep that lead and force Mac Jones to try to beat them. And rookies are rookies. And we have a lot of games. I think, look, we have Tampa Bay Eagles, Rams in Arizona. So it's only 2. It felt like more, where there was a young quarterback against an old, stodgy old man type quarterback. but it's not that many.
Yeah.
This one is close to that. This is a young quarterback against a quarterback who's at least been here a little bit before. Um, so I'm going to give it to Buffalo. Although, like you say, if this game gets close and it comes down to who's got the smarter guy on the sidelines, who's going to make the right call at the right time, push the right button, game's not going according to game plan, well, then obviously New England is the team to take that in this scenario.
Yeah, and just looking at my weather app to see what the weather forecast is for Buffalo for Saturday. Saturday looks like cloudy with a high of 9 degrees and a low of 1, and they have the Saturday night game, so it'll be
chilly.
It'll be chilly, dark, absolutely freezing. Doesn't say anything about snow. So it might not be snowing, but it might be cold and windy. So, similar to the Packers-Vikings game last week, we might be seeing just a brutal cold weather special and a fan base that will be very well lubricated to survive the cold, and that should be entertaining in itself. This stuff is what playoff football is all about.
There may be tables broken on the field just because, Bills Mafia. They may have a pregame table smashing, jump from the third deck into a table.
Right, because what else is there to do in Buffalo aside from get blasted and go through tables and watch the Bills?
I don't know what else there is. I'm just going to say that if I was of a particular age, I'm not sure that there's much better to do in general. So I'm not going to make Bills Mafia. At my age, there's a lot to do better than get blasted and jump through a table. But at a certain particular age, I'll go for it. So I believe we've talked about all of the playoff games. I'm very excited to say, which it does leave us time a little bit for what happened last night in college.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did your eyes make it to that championship game at all?
No. I have zero interest in college football. It's just the same few teams that win every year. We finally so I am very happy, and I was pleasantly surprised to read this morning that Georgia won. Before we go into that, just one final little schedule quirk that one of those things that only appeals to people like me is that there have only been, I think, 3 Monday night playoff games in the history of the NFL, and the Rams have played in all of them. Or maybe 2 of the 3 previous ones. So who gets scheduled for the Monday night game this year? The Rams.
Well played, NFL, to keep that going. So now there can be stats on it. So I am with you, and I would say that yes, I was happy that that Georgia won, but I wasn't even that interested because the SEC won again, and I am. A few years ago, and it's kind of changed now, and I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. Women's college basketball was UConn versus the world, and Ariema was getting angry that people were questioning whether that was good for the sport and how dare you would never do it if it was a man's sport. But I'm going to pose the same question about the SEC and its dominance in college football. Does the rest of the country begin to lose interest? I mean, look,
they already have.
Occasion, go on. Yeah, go with it. Take that, and if there's more for me to add, I will. Does the rest of the country begin to lose interest because it's just an SEC sport now?
I think they already have. The way that the playoff format is structured, that you basically have the SEC, Ohio State, Clemson, and then everybody else. The semifinal games weren't even competitive. Kudos to Cincinnati for even making the Final Fours, but the Final Four, but they just got absolutely blasted in their semifinal, and so did Michigan, who was dominant most of the season. And then just for us to get a championship game featuring the same 2 teams that played in the SEC championship game a few weeks ago, this isn't good for college football. Yet the pile of money keeps growing, and colleges keep making insane conference jumps for their college football teams. College football has done a lot to hurt the sport I love the most, college basketball. And just this is insane and not really not really sustainable. And before this game, there was 3 days of discussions between the all of the league commissioners about expanding the college football playoff, which there needs to be unanimous agreement for them to adjust the playoff format before the end of the current contract with ESPN, which runs through the 2025 football season. The talks broke off with no progress whatsoever. Very similar to what happened with the baseball negotiations and or lack thereof before the lockout, which is just everybody. Each league commissioner, the big, has their vested interests that they're trying to do. It's become the SEC versus everybody else. So you have that weird alliance of the unofficial alliance that was formed between the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC. The Big 12 conference, in losing Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, now nobody trusts the SEC, and the Big 12 is kind of reduced to where they're not quite Group of Five level, but it's looking more like looking more like the Power 4.5 conferences going forward than the Power Five. Is that good for the sport? No, not really. Especially since you have a caste system that relegates the rest of these leagues and most of the schools in the other leagues in those supposed Power Five conferences to a second class or third class status. By keeping it at only four, you're only getting the same few teams in it every year, and the same players are going to go to those schools. That might change going forward with NIL, the name, image, and likeness things, where somebody could be a bigger fish in a small pond and be compensated handsomely in endorsements for doing so. Does that start to spread some talent around more in the next few years? We'll see. But at the same time, just seeing the same few teams in it every year is bad for college football, especially when you throw in all of the other drama and garbage around it that affects other sports and that affects the college football landscape and all college sports in general.
So I think you made two good points. I think the worst thing that college football did to college basketball, and I know this affects you personally, was break up the Big East. That was heartbreaking that the Big East, Syracuse leaving the Big East in college basketball, joining the ACC. I mean, it was heartbreaking, and I agree that conference jumping, because you're conference jumping for one sport, it's killing another sport.
Yeah.
And I doubt that NIL is going to help. I think NIL is going to do exactly the opposite. I think NIL is going to draw people more and more and more to just the same small groups of schools, because I don't think you're going to get local NIL. I think you're going to get national NIL, and that's where the real money is going to be.
You're going to get all of it.
Yeah. I don't. What's the use of me going to Rutgers or NIL? But why am I going to pay some student $1 million in NIL at Rutgers when I know he's not going to get any attention? When I could pay a lineman at Alabama $500,000 for NIL because he's got 3 other contracts because he's a national figure. It becomes, you're investing in, when you invest in somebody's name as a major company, you're doing it because they're out there and people know. If you're doing it to kind of because you're doing it as a booster to recruit, you guys still get a bunch of guys. And so then you have to, how much money am I really willing to pay for the best quarterback in the country to come to my school in NIL? And then the transfer portal comes up because somebody else goes, oh, you really turned out to be good. Come to Alabama and you'll get $300 million or $1 million NIL. I don't think it's going to help. I think it's going to concentrate the talent even more in the SEC and in the few power schools, Ohio State, Clemson, or whoever else just tries to stay afloat, Notre Dame, in college football.
I mean, you'll see a bit of both. And it's also worth noting that all of the schools that chase that college football dragon yes, they're making more money to be doormats. All of those schools that left the Big East, Syracuse, Pitt, Boston College, Louisville, to an extent, they're all getting the tar beaten out of him in both football and basketball more often than not. Syracuse basketball only makes the tournament every year and plays as well as they do because of Jim Boeheim still coaching them. As soon as Boeheim retires, Syracuse goes right to the bottom of the ACC with Pittsburgh in basketball. And Pittsburgh was winning the ACC Pittsburgh. Yes, Pittsburgh did win the ACC championship game in football, but they're not Clemson. And they're not going to be Clemson. None of these schools are. Rutgers went to the Big Ten, and they made a bowl game only because there's so many bowl game slots that they made it with the 5-7 record.
Yeah, well, Clemson isn't even Clemson anymore in the ACC. Look, you know what Clemson was? Clemson was that guy sitting in Jacksonville with the beautiful hair. He's gone. Clemson's gone. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Lawrence is gone and Clemson is gone. Auburn hasn't even been back since Newton. So there's some of these programs they land a great quarterback, and then they land him young, and they're relevant for 3 or 4 years, and then that quarterback goes to the pros. Or they land a great running back.
Win their first championship before Lawrence, I believe. So it wasn't just Lawrence.
Are you sure?
No, I need to go look that up.
I thought it was Lawrence. I thought it was all Lawrence, but maybe I'm wrong.
There's a Todd Boyd championship in there, I thought, but I need to look that up real quick.
But because they certainly weren't good this year, they certainly weren't rebooting the way that Alabama and LSU rebooted for a while, and even LSU can't maintain themselves anymore. It's really just Alabama, and then some other teams trying to fight their way in. Ohio State. It's becoming less interesting. And I just want to say that people go back into the original point is Auriemma got angry that people were questioning it. And I want to say that I'm seeing more and more people questioning the value of Alabama being so good and the SEC being so good on college football. So it's not a question that was only addressed towards women's basketball and UConn. And that makes me happy because sometimes he may have had a valid point. And it's good to see the question being asked in other college sports because it doesn't necessarily get asked in pro sports. And in pro sports, I do think it's different. I think we love a dynasty in pro sports. Yeah, but that's because there's 30 teams, not 103.
Right. Clemson did win their first championship in 2016 with Deshaun Watson.
Yes. Okay. I stand or sit corrected.
Yeah. And I believe we're coming up on the end here.
I thought we should have been over 3 minutes ago, but our producer is letting us run with it. So running we are, which is fine. So other than the talk we have, let's just go out on a limb now and take our Super Bowl picks. As of this week, which is a shorter change, who do you like?
I'm thinking that that it's the Packers from the NFC. Rodgers has been on a mission all year, and I don't see that changing. Rodgers is on the warpath. I do think that we are set up for another rematch of Bucs Packers NFC Championship game, and I don't think that Rodgers loses it for a second year in a row. I think that they are on the warpath and they are going to roll through the NFC. It might be a tough game in the NFC Championship, but I don't think the Packers lose this time. I'm thinking probably. Let's see. We have Tampa. If we have in the NFC, we have Tampa, Dallas, and the Cardinals. I'm thinking for this week. So that sets up the Cardinals playing the Packers. I think that's a blowout. And then you'd have Dallas and Tampa, which is a tough matchup that could go either way, but I think Tampa pulls that off. So I'm going chalk in the NFC with the Packers going through. AFC is tougher though. I'm thinking that the Raiders playing the Titans, if that matchup holds, that is going to be a very interesting game. and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Raiders beat them, and it sets up a KC and then you have KC and Buffalo in the second division round game. I think KC wins that yet again. So that sets up a Raiders Chiefs division rival AFC Championship game. I think that we probably end up with a Chiefs Packers Super Bowl.
Okay, I'm going to I'm going chalk on both sides. I made my prediction on a few weeks ago, and I'm going to stick with it until one of those teams loses. I got Green Bay and Tennessee. In terms of what's going to happen this week, and this is only Tuesday, there's plenty to happen, including many COVID cases, I'm afraid. But you'll find that out on NFL Insiders on Sunday. Until then, I'm Obi Spencer. That's JD Walker. Have a great day.